Future Design Podcast.
Hi, this is the Future Design Podcast, and today I got Wesley Dunn, a digital transformation specialist. And today he's going to tell us about how do you lead from a distance? How do you engage employees while working from home? How do you measure their productivity and efficiency? What are the tools that you can use? And how do you manage the tough questions or decisions during working remotely? So stick around to the end. And now over to you, Wesley.
Thanks very much, Tucker. So starting with the first point there, and thank you very much for inviting me on again. Leading from a distance, that's quite a big topic to cover. What I'd suggest to the audience out there is that it's really important to coach your team during these uncertain times, and the ways that you can actually do that. And for those that are lucky enough to work from home, that are healthy enough to work from home during this quarantine time, jobs seem trivial and somewhat very irritating. Being physically separated from your colleagues, your customers, the normal workplace is really where people find themselves very much alone. They're with their computers. You literally are going through sporadically touching base with people remotely, and especially with those people that you used to see quite regularly. Many people actually feel lost. I'm including myself in that equation, because all you literally wake up to is, go work. There's no commute to work. There's no commute home from work. Your lunch hours are no longer lunch hours. They're literally eating your lunch at your laptop. And then you literally find yourself, living at your computer, and then obviously trying to segment home life from personal life. Anyway, that said, leaders actually find themselves pretty lost with coaching their people, and what they need to do is they need to really help their employees reevaluate their lives and help them rethink what their roles are in the organization that they're working on. So that could be individually, or that could actually be for a company. So some of the top tips there that I'd say is that, how do you serve the people that you lead? So things that you should think about there is, how do you actually engage with people regularly? That could be via phone calls, that could be via video calls. Now, I'm very pro picking up the phone. I know it sounds very old school in technology, but as we are engaging a lot with tools like Zoom and tools like Microsoft Teams and Skype, etc., people have become so burnt out and overwhelmed with all these tools that they actually don't want to engage with it. Just this morning, I was talking to some of my team based here in Melbourne on a conference call, and some of the folks were disengaged because they've been having to attend so many of these meetings, and because they've had to attend so many of these meetings, they've actually missed out on actually providing some of their key inputs, right? The other thing that I'd also do is I'd ask people about how they're doing and how can you help, even if it had nothing to do with work. So start about, having the conversation with them about what's going on in their personal life. Yes, people are overhearing about COVID-19, right? We're completely overwhelmed with that, the news, social media, all that kind of stuff. Ask people about what's going on in their personal lives. How's their child's development going? What are, for those people that are working from home, that are parents, the schooling that they're doing from homeschooling for them, how they're managing that? What are some of the ways that you can help them with that in terms of how they can manage their time better? The next thing that I think about is how you help employees discover their personal purpose. Now, what I mean by that is it's really about coming back to the message that I said before, is reevaluating their lives. What is their role in the organization? Help them ask questions like, what's my job going to be like, my role like now? This is during the pandemic and post the pandemic. Is that going to change? How can I assist my organization to succeed? And what do they actually want out of their career? If they go and they answer those three specific questions, that's going to take them some time to really work through that. Really help them shape, some of the thought-provoking strategies around what is their role going to be like in the future. And then the third thing is, and there's some good examples here that we can provide, is how do we encourage employees where some of them that you may have heard in the news that Virgin had let go of quite a lot of staff, is that how do some of those individuals that work for a company like Virgin or Tiger Air, etc., go and recraft their jobs and essentially remain active? Now, there's different tools and techniques that are being applied in the industry. Different governments are doing providing different stimulus packages. But if you had for example, somebody who was an airline pilot, I've got a good friend of mine that's an airline pilot that's recently lost their job. What does that person do now? Do they go and become a retail stacker in a company like a company like Woolworths, Coles, or Cold Storage, which is the one that you have there in Singapore? Or do they actually go and move from commercially flying planes to cargo planes? That's another way they can diversify if that airline allows them to. Or do they become entrepreneurs? Do they go into consulting? Do they take all the knowledge and skills and expertise that they have? Because a lot of fundamentally what we've learned at school and in our careers are skills that can actually be applied to any job. And then you specialize within that. Another good example is where you found personal trainers training out of a gym where they've had a facility. Those facilities are no longer open. Yes, I know we're all exercising from home, or we're meant to be exercising from home, but a lot of people aren't. Personal trainers are actually having to diversify themselves, where they're actually running operations outside of their garage, or they're doing work in the park, right, where they're training people one-on-one. They've had to obviously also extend themselves to go down that route and to re-diversify themselves. I think there's a lot of lessons to be learned from all of that, and I think we should always remain vigilant that a pandemic like COVID-19 or anything else for that matter, we were always going to move towards the strategy sooner or later where we would have had jobs move a lot more remotely as opposed to in the typical bricks and mortar businesses. The pandemic has just assisted us in accelerating that. And we've got to take this opportunity now. And I think there's going to be some really valuable conversations coming out post the pandemic around why can I not work from home going forward?
Yeah. And more than ever, I think empathy is now focused as a skill set necessary for leadership. And now that we're at home, we have kids at home, we have elderlies at home, things that we have to take care of that normally didn't exist while we were in the office. Now, there are people who are single, and then there are people who have to take care of bigger families. Now, the works that they can provide to be efficient and productive has completely changed because, when you're in the office, you're by yourself. Whether you have a big family or single, it doesn't matter. You're in the office. But now you have to deal with all this stress and more work at home other than the work that you're assigned to do. How do you arrange the work between these people?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, right? What a lot of the consulting firms do is they have this and there's a lot of tools that are available like this. Myers-Briggs is a good example, right? The organization that I'm employed with right now is something which is called business chemistry, where you try and work out what type of personality style the individual is that you work with. And then highly encourage this for any team leader that's actually leading, groups of, 4 or 5 people or more. Where you actually find out what is the strengths and weaknesses of each individual. Now, this is going to be obviously pretty tough to ask people what are their weaknesses because not everybody's going to essentially volunteer that information. But what you go and do is you either work out whether people are drivers or they are pioneers or they guardians or they're people that are being to be a lot more empathetic towards working with what's in it for me around or what's in it for the team. And what I would do is I'd plot that and I'd go through an exercise of plotting that, going through the exercise of plotting that with my team, getting them to fill out questionnaires, and you can typically do that via Myers-Briggs. And then I would associate the work with the individual based on their the hours that they can work. Now, somebody that's going to be a stay-at-home parent that is, maybe they're teaching their kids, they're homeschooling their kids from, let's say, 7 to 11 a.m. you're not going to assign them any work during that time because they're not essentially at work, right? So then in which case you would assign that particular work to one of the other team based on their competency level. And then when the person that's the parent comes back online, you may associate other work with them to go and complete and take that task going forward. It really depends on the task at hand, and some of it can only be done by senior team members, for example, because a lot of it may be experience-based. So you've really got to break down to what is, simple, medium, and complex tasks, and then what needs to be done by a specific date and time, and then really work back from that and really plot in terms of when you can actually see your team. And you can use tools like Slack that can actually help you manage that as well.
And how do you also manage the leadership of your small team leaders? Now, I had a friend who's also a boss of a mini group of teams, different teams, and he was trying to coach them on how to be a motivational leader in these times to their staff. And so he was teaching how to lead to these people. Now, is there any good way to do this? He Googled lots of YouTube videos that showed motivational speakers on how to lead, and then they showed them that and told them, let's watch this together, and then we're going to perform this similar type of activity to their staff, or give the similar speech to their staff so they can still be motivated. Are there any things that you can think of?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what I'll do is I'll focus on the 6 dimensions of what we call inclusive leadership, right? And what do I mean by inclusive leadership, right? Is when you're running a meeting, it could be a face-to-face meeting. Obviously, I know we're talking about remote work here, but the same principles will apply for face-to-face interactions. So a lot of you can take this in your face-to-face interactions when everything goes back to normal, if ever that happens, and that will happen sooner or later. Is that what you would do is you'd focus on commitment. So what I mean by commitment is diversity and inclusion. So how do you ensure that every single person, irrespective of their ethnic background, their sex, or their age, or any of their sexual orientations, that they are actually feeling included, and you actually challenge the status quo. You can do this via different ways, but what we recommend to do there is being very agile and always being flexible around your meeting times. So, for example, if somebody says they can't attend a meeting, we take our example of our parent that is doing homeschooling. They can't attend a meeting between 7 and 11. You set up that meeting, after 11 a.m. or when it works for the broader team, so that you feel that everybody's included. And you cannot you cannot outright not allow people that are homeschooling not to attend those particular meetings, because that is really grounds for bullying. So you'd want to have everybody completely engaged with that. Another way you could do it is like we're doing today. Like we've got a webcast that we're running right now, which is where you're seeing me on my camera. I'm sitting in Melbourne. You're sitting in Singapore. Encourage people to use their video or their webcams, right? So you can actually see that. Now, I know this is really going to be based on everyone's personality. Not everyone's going to feel as confident to show their camera, but give them the option that it's there, and it would be good to do that. And at least you've got somebody you can see and you can talk to. A lot of the visual cues that we used to get when we were in meetings, physical meetings, you can't actually pick up on now, because you're actually looking at a monitor. So I can only determine, by your facial expression, Taka, for example, how you're feeling around how we're talking today. But a lot of those social cues you actually miss, in virtual meetings. And then, as we've discussed in the previous episode, use all those collaboration tools that are available. So be it Microsoft Teams, be it Skype, be it Slack, be it Zoom, and even Google Meet. They all will get you everywhere. And there's a myriad of free tools available on the internet. You just search them. The next aspect is around courage. So how do you be humble and empathetic as a leader? And you need to be so humble around your strengths and your weaknesses. I cannot emphasize this enough, right? You need to admit your mistakes, and don't don't act as if your way is the only way and it is the right way of, or the best way of doing something. What works well for me might work well for me. That may not necessarily mean that it works well for you. So it's trial and error, and the team has to really find the best way of what works for them. The third item would be around cognizance of bias. So what do I mean by that is you as a highly inclusive leader need to be mindful that there's personal and organizational blind spots, and you need to self-regulate yourself to ensure that there's always a fair playing ground. What I mean by that is, always making sure that you check yourself and rewire the system there, so that you're always ensure that you're not playing an unconscious bias towards somebody because of what background they are from, where they are from, where they grew up, and all that type of thing, that you treat everybody fairly and equally. Because some people may have gone through some experiences in their life that they don't feel comfortable in sharing with you. So that's where it's always a level playing field. That's important. The fourth point is curiosity. Now, what do I mean by that is having an open mindset, a desire to understand how others view the world and experience the world. And having a tolerance for ambiguity. Now, I love ambiguity. Sometimes I'll have a discussion with my wife about this and say, look, I enjoy working and thriving in an environment where it's ambiguous. Others may like to know, exactly hard and fast where's the stop point, because that's culturally how they've grown up. Now, there you would ask the person about, tell me more about such and such, right? Or the question, you'd play back the question to them and maybe paraphrase it back to them in a different way to test your understanding. The fifth point would be around, and I've touched on this a little bit, is cultural intelligence. So understand that you're confident and effective in understanding all the different cross-cultural interactions that there are. So understanding and learning more about different cultures. It's very difficult right now in these times to be a cultural traveler, because you can't obviously go anywhere where all of us are grounded. But talk to people, understand more about their culture and what it is that they where they come from and their background. And the last point would be collaboration. So use design thinking techniques, and a lot of the design thinking techniques are freely available also on the web, but how you actually work with diverse groups. So allowing everyone to share their opinion, creating an open space where they can share their opinions, which really leads to them empowering and uplifting themselves to actually share more with you than you ever wanted to.
Especially in the collaboration part. Now that you can't physically collaborate, you can only digitally or virtually collaborate. And a lot of the work that you need to do must be much more efficient than before. And I know that if you're in the office, you can ask somebody or delegate something to some other people. Now, where time is so constricted for a lot of people, you have to do a lot of that work yourself. Now, are there any digital hacks that you can think of that we can go onto the internet and find, or you can be on YouTube where there's plenty of tutorials on how to do certain things more efficiently? Do you recommend more of these, and do you have any ideas where people can go to?
So this is digital hacks around virtual meetings specifically?
Virtual or even speeding up the work tasks that you do. So sometimes, you could spend a little bit of money on your personal money to, get some kind of service, digital service. You can Google that and you can find certain things that people do. Let's say like transcription. I mean, you can find transcription services online that you pay a little bit of money or subscription, and then you could get that, done very quickly. Those kind of things.
Yeah, look, I don't have a lot of experience in specifically on how what we recommend there, but I'll tell you what I've used there is obviously. Google and YouTube are your best friend, right? I mean, yes, there's a lot to go through, and to decipher that. A lot of organizations have got their own knowledge exchange, which they generally go and trawl for information about, how to do certain things. but you'd be surprised what you actually find on Google, and half the time, probably suppose 80% of the world's population always enters something into Google, and there's always a dummy's guide to something where they can actually understand, how to gauge a particular service. Some of this would also boil down to contractual obligations that they have because of the legal jurisdiction that they work in, that they would have the legal department actually review, how they would engage a transcription service, for example. But that's obviously something that can come later. But what I would say is around some of the hacks that folks should look at is, go and assess all the different tools that are available from a collaboration perspective. There's a lot that you can find on YouTube that would and Google that would do comparisons across the different tools. What is better and what would work for your pocket from a price perspective. It's almost like buying a mobile phone. When you want to go compare the latest iPhone with, for example, the iPhone 11 Pro Max with the 11 Pro versus some of the previous versions, the X, and you would actually understand which one gets you what. And then you can always go and also use the trial versions as well of those products where you can try it before you buy it. A good example of that is Google Meet, where you set up a GeForce account that allows you to become a business user for 14 days before you actually start paying for the subscription. That allows you to actually trial out a lot of the products as well. That's pretty great. And then I would also say it's not necessarily a hack for all of this, but just ensure that when people are working from home, that they have a designated space. There's what's your office versus your home life, right? And today I'm talking to you from my office. My wife is sitting right opposite me, remaining quiet in the background, and we're sharing an office space, but having boundaries between that and having a daily routine. And a daily routine might be just walking to a post box, and actually you could have a post box just 20 meters away. Just go there and break the ice around getting up versus going to sit at your desk and then talking to your computer monitor the whole day and doing some work, right? Because there's still work to be done, and ensuring that you deliver value to your business, but also most importantly, spending time with your family.
Yeah, I never thought that going to the supermarket for grocery shopping would be the highlight of my day.
It's true. That's the highlight of my weekend.
Yeah. So now we go to the final question that I have for you is like, how do you manage the tough decisions that you have to make and the delivery of that? So in specific, I'm talking about headcount reductions or certain decisions that will curtail people's financial lives or I guess their mental state as well.
Yeah, and there's some great techniques there that one can use. I mean, we're in an extremely unique situation now with this COVID-19 pandemic, that we've both where we have to potentially lay off employees will be both emotionally and cognitively overwhelming and draining, right? You've got to remain empathetic to those employees that you're having those tough conversations with. And yes, your heart is going to go out to those people. You have a responsibility to the organization because you've got a set job. You've got to, reduce headcount, and that tension is actually amplified when you worry about your own fate, right? So, for example, you could also have your own head on the chopping board. So, the key is to separate your personal situation from the task at hand. And your role as a leader is really to be there for your people, to listen to them. I'll give you a couple of different examples of how you can do that, right? So the first and foremost is reflect on whether layoffs whether layoffs or centralization or decentralization is required of roles, right? So where you, for example, you may be minimizing some roles, and ask your teams. This could be your HR teams, this could be your leadership teams, to really challenge yourself around, do you really need to downsize the workforce, and is it really necessary, right? And that really comes down to a P&L type question of whether you can afford it or not. we are very much in a periodic recession right now, and there's a large impulse to cut costs, and then everyone thinks that by cutting costs you're automatically going to get there, and that's not necessarily the right answer. This pandemic actually represents a historical moment for us where it's not only pivotal towards our economical stabilization in the long term, but we actually are creating different responses for our economy, our communities, and our people, right? Because at the end of this, we need to come out strong and healthy. You need to think very creatively about how your organization can save as many jobs as possible, and whether you can actually make sacrifices somewhere else, or there's other options to reduce costs. So a good example is, I've recently gone through this myself, is where the organization I'm working for everyone took a 20% haircut on their salaries, and we'll be doing that for 5 months. If the organization does well over the next 5 months, we'll get that money back. But if not, my salary is reduced by 20% every month for the next 5 months, right? Now, some people may be in situations where they can't afford to do that because they might have a lot of expenditure that's obviously needs to drive that, and especially if they are a single income household, that might be a little bit difficult to do. So you've got to think of strategies of how you can manage that and work that through. The next is I'd figure out how you actually deliver the news to your employees, and you need to do that on an individual basis. And you need to craft that message carefully for each individual, because every individual is going to react differently. What I mean by that is people are going to ask you a lot of questions about the timing. What are the benefits that they're going to get? Is there any severance for them if they qualify for that? And a lot of the conversations are actually going to occur very fast, and there are going to be a lot of things that happen actually going to require their undivided attention. So, for example, if you're going to call the person that's doing homeschooling, right, during those hours of 8 and 11 that they're working at home with their kids, you're not going to get their divided attention or undivided attention. You want to have that conversation with them when they are completely understand and they're open to it, and you're going to need to be very empathetic towards having the dialogue with them and understand, explaining to them what the situation is about. You need to set the tone very well. I spoke about being empathetic. Even more now than ever, being empathetic to your people is more critical, and showing that compassion and fairness and respect is of utmost importance. You'd like to do have the conversation via video conference or video link if you can, but making eye contact and being fully present is actually key. So, not me being there having a conversation with you today, being on my keyboard doing something else. I want to completely engage when it's completely shut down the laptop, have the conversation with you, look the person in the eye, be honest and straight with them. The next item is about being human, and now I'll break this down into certain components. Your message should be very clear, consistent, and concise, and unambiguous as possible, right? Nobody likes ambiguity, especially when it comes to something like this. Expressing your gratitude for the dedication of their hard work that they've actually gone through is key. A lot of organizations actually celebrate, when you move on to another job, but your co-workers are not necessarily going to get an opportunity now to have a farewell party. Yes, you can probably do that, on Zoom, etc. It's probably not going to be the same, but they won't have the opportunity to do that in person, given the situation that we're in. The next would be offer any assistance that you can to that person that's being having to let go, and being transparent as much as possible about the process. Yes, it's not going to be perfect, and it's okay to vent, right? And what I mean by venting is, having you as a leader, having somebody that you can confide in. That could be somebody that's a peer within the industry. That could be somebody that's a mentor to you in the organization that you work, or it could be a colleague, right? Or it could just be, it could be a family member that you confide in, to know that you don't really know about your own future, because you could also be the person that's very well going through this too, and being very cautious about what you share and the emotions that you share with your team, because you don't want to show that you're not an effective leader in this whole process. So it's critical to balance that off.
That was awesome inside tips. Thank you for that, Wesley. In the next episode, Wesley will be talking to us about how to retain customer loyalty when you can't meet face to face, and how to improve productivity while working from home. So don't miss the next episode. Hi, this is your host Takatoshi Shibayama. Thank you for listening all the way to the end. Now, if you enjoyed or disliked the show, please let me know by writing in the comment section. The only way I can improve or add value to you is through your voices. If there are any topics that you would like me to pick up, please also let me know in the comments. I'd love to start chatting with you all. And if you would like to continue watching the show, please subscribe. Thank you.